Our next speaker requested to be introduced only as Bill, a simple author. Please, the floor is yours.
早安, polski朋友. 名字是何为例？些人听懂吗？没有，为什么？不知道。多年我在这儿 doesn't work, does it? Marine proof, isn't it? All right. Anybody understand what I just said? What language was I speaking in? Well, who said that? What was that?
Mandarin.
Mandarin, yes. So some of you recognize me from last year. Did anyone take up Chinese after last year's presentation? 没有，为什么？真的呢？哦，谁人听懂吗？ Does anybody understand what I just said? Anybody? No? Okay. Just like last year's presentation, by the way, thank you for having me back. I'm going to conduct this language in English, Chinese, and attempt Russian, but don't hold me to that. The rules of engagement with this presentation are that if you have any questions as I go through it, please interrupt and ask them. Do not wait until the end. Mr. Moderator, do I have my entire time frame, or did it get cut short? I did, okay, all right. I'll try and hurry it up so we get back on track. So please, if you have questions, interrupt me. We're going to do a little bit of map orientation. I'm going to take you to some binary dark alleys that take all those rules and regulations you just heard about and throw them in the trash can. They don't matter in two countries, China and Russia. They do not care about anything that is not Russian or is not Chinese. Doesn't matter to them. All those systems you think you're protecting are unprotected when it comes to Chinese and Russian cyber criminals. Likewise, if I say something that does not fit with your Polish sensibilities and is a little bit perhaps controversial, challenge me. I do not have all the answers, trust me. I never pretend to. All right. So last year I introduced you to one of my books. I thought it was banned in China. As I gave my opening soliloquy, I was there 3 weeks ago as a guest of the Chinese government. It is not banned. I was incorrect, nor are my other 3 books. In fact, in a sense of humility, they regard those as an attempt by the Western world to understand what they're doing in the cyber world. But you will find out here in a few minutes it does not matter. All right, everyone in the room has been hacked. Is there anybody that disagrees with me? I heard yes? Нет, no. Okay, good, because you're all being hacked right now. Anybody disagree with that? What? What was that?
I don't know.
You don't know? You don't know if you're being hacked? Oh, goodness. What organization do you represent, sir? Hopefully you're not in the government. All right. Cyber adversary taxonomy, I introduced it to you last year. We talked about state enterprises at the top. Today we're going to talk about only criminal organizations. We may touch on some cyber collectives, but if you have questions about anything else on that adversarial taxonomy, stop me and ask me, and I will do my best to answer your question. All right. So what happened last week here in Poland? We got spies, the human intelligence side of things, perhaps as a precursor to cyber activities, trying to take advantage of your national secrets. Hopefully you've all read this story, right? It's in Polish, yes? Has anybody not seen this before? Go ahead and raise your hand, it's okay. Hopefully you're paying attention. You have not seen this? Well, somebody's a brave soul. You have seen it. You're just the only one that's willing to raise your hand. Whoa, that feedback. But you have seen this, yes, sir? Okay, good. Was this surprising that it was perhaps Russians? No. Okay, good, all right. So I'm not telling you anything new. All right, so last week we also heard about the 214 cyber crime trends, and this inundation of information from this eye chart tells you that cybercrime is increasing, yes? These results were released by a Russian cyber outfit. Of course, they should well know their own binary backyard, shouldn't they? I find it's interesting that they're showing that it's increasing while they're trying to sell cyber products to stem that tide of cybercrime. Cybercrime in Poland is indeed a growing problem, isn't it? It's probably a third, in some cases 2/3 of what it is in the rest of the globe, but when you compare it to perhaps Russia or China, it is still growing and still a serious problem. If you're between the ages of 18 and 32 in this audience, raise your hand. Oh, come on. You got to be kidding me. Only 2 of you? I know that young lady's laughing. She's shy. That's okay. You can raise your hand. It's all right. If you're in that age group of 18 to 32, you're more likely. Yes, sir, please.
18 to 30, sir.
You're 18 to 32. Oh, that's stunning. Yeah. And what timeline is that? Probably the UK timeline is. Yeah. Okay. So if you're in that time frame of 18 to 32, you're more likely to have experienced it and will experience it as a growing problem as you and your children grow older. There we go. We can play this. So hackers and cybercrime is a proportion of gross domestic product. The 3 countries on the planet that have the greatest threat to them are Norway, China, and the United States. In those particular cases, it is a higher loss of their actual total gross domestic product, meaning that if they produce, say, $1, 65 cents of that is going to cybercrime when it comes to GDP. That's not a good measure, is it? All right, so let's go to China. In the news yesterday, in the Chinese press, as you can read up there, and I'm sure you can all read these 2 articles, the Chinese are still curious about why the Federal Bureau of Investigation in the United States is saying that they are the most serious threat to the United States. The Chinese cannot figure this out, and they're wondering what in the heck is happening. Why does a federal law enforcement organization in the United States blame us? Why? We are trying to do our best to control this issue. So let's talk about Chinese cybercrime. Who knows who this gentleman is? There's 3 in the room that do. Who is he? He's the new head of the FBI. Recently, he came out and said those hackers in China are like drunken burglars. Why would he say that? I don't know. It's curious. Maybe he doesn't know the Chinese, or maybe he knows them better than I do. I don't know either way. I understand he has not been to China. So the Chinese are angered by this, and they come out with a news bite that says, we cannot cooperate with the United States when it comes to issues of cybersecurity or cybercrime. They want to point the finger at us and not understand. So what do we do, folks? Well, we arrest them, don't we? In one particular case, the FBI said we have a Chinese spy who stole secrets from NASA, and then when we apprehended him, guess what we found on his computer? Porn. Not NASA secrets. Oh dear. That means we have 100% attribution, doesn't it? No, we do not. The question I have for you folks is, Whiskey Tango Foxtrot, what are we doing? Do I need to explain that to anybody? Anybody? Okay. You don't know what that means? Okay, all right, good. All right. So it's interesting because the Chinese are going to actually cooperate with other nations, including Poland. In this particular case, they cooperated with Indonesia, which is a Muslim country who they do not endear themselves to as a religion, and work with them to arrest not only Chinese but Taiwanese cyber criminals. But back in the good old US, of course, they're not. What's interesting about this particular forum on internet security in China is they held it without any foreigners. Meaning we don't need any Mayo-Weigoren. We do not need any of your foreign experience or opinions to come here and tell us how to do it. And why would that be important in China? Any ideas, sir? They don't like foreigners. You're not going to tell me anything different. If I'm Chinese and you're Polish, I could care less. You know why? Because I'm Chinese. That's their view. Now, when it comes to cybercrime treaties, China did not sign the one that was introduced in 2001 or in 2010. And why is that? Well, it says it right up on the slide. Foreign laws do not apply in China, period. So let's talk about some of these Chinese hackers. Here is a concept map for Chinese cybercrime. It's in Mandarin, of course, but it tells me in Mandarin how I can violate your system, sir, which is not being hacked, using Mandarin. Remember, if you have any questions, please ask them as I go through this. So I left you last year with a dark guess, the hackers. Do I need to review this slide for anybody? Okay, we're going to jump off from there and go right into Chinese hacking. So you saw the Chinese cyber police, and they have these little avatars, as you'll see up on the screen here. that will tell you not to go to anywhere that is subversive to the regime, and now they're starting to migrate into an enforcement of cyber criminality, meaning they are now considering that, as you'll see in a subsequent slide, a threat to national security inside China. Each particular city, in this case it's Shenzhen, down by Hong Kong or Xianggang, the cyber police are making sure that if you do go somewhere naughty, that you will receive one of these avatars that comes on the screen and tells you you're not supposed to go there. And if you persist, we will come and arrest you. This applies not only to things that question the Chinese Communist Party, but also those things that are illicit, and we'll talk about those internet rules. Now, cybercrime inside China over the years has gone from hundreds of cases, as you see in 1999, all the way up to thousands. And what this has done is the Chinese government has said, we're going to enforce or introduce technology to help us control this cybercrime issue because the volume is too large for standard enforcement. And when you look at this across the landscape of China, it's going from hundreds on the last slide now into the tens of thousands when you start to look at 2012 and beyond. What's interesting here is one of the largest internet cybercrime rings inside China led and contributed to $46 billion in loss. $46 billion. What is the GDP of Poland? Is it 46 billion, sir? You're nodding no. And yet, it is not. How much is it? 3 billion? This gives you an idea of the scale. So if you could harness Chinese hackers to help grow your economy in Poland, you would outclass the United States. Maybe there's a lesson in there somewhere. All right. So in one particular case, the Chinese hackers are actually using official government websites, as you can see up here, to do a phishing attack on unsuspecting users who think they're going to a bona fide Communist Party website. They click on that particular link, and of course their Chinese bank account is then emptied. What's interesting here is the Chinese government said, you know what, we cannot solve our own problems. We're going to call in Colonel Kaspersky of Kaspersky Security to help us solve this. So now you have a Russian cybersecurity firm helping the Chinese solve Chinese cybercrime. But wait a minute. Bill, you said just a few minutes ago they don't like foreigners. Why would they like Colonel Kaspersky to come in and help? Anyone?
They speak good Russian.
They speak good Russian.
Yeah.
They do.
Just only
They do, you're right, yes. A little bit of a trivial story. So when I was there in 1983, I went down a back alley in Beijing, and this older gentleman, he was probably 80, he came up to me and he said in perfect Chinese, obviously, I didn't know the Russians were back. Wow, I guess I must look Russian. Yee, scary. All right, so this gives you another idea from the Chinese law enforcement perspective. When it comes to public security, we're talking about hundreds, thousands. We're now starting to talk about tens of thousands historically in terms of the cybercrime problem inside China. Has anyone in the room besides me been to China in the past 3 weeks? Really? Oh dear. Oh, you have, sir? 4 weeks? Where did you go? This is interesting. This is good.
I will not say where, what, no.
Okay, all right, okay. Just curious. Because if you had gone, and I'm sure you probably would have told us this, you have to give your passport, which is registered, your passport number is registered to the MAC address inside your hotel room. You have a router specifically identifying you or me directly to that. So any nefarious activity that you may conduct on the Chinese internet, they know without a doubt that it's you as a foreigner. The same applies in China. So how could they have all these cyber criminals, you must ask, right? What are the past few slides? I said tens of thousands. 2 weeks ago, they're now talking about 1 million different cases of cybercrime inside China. So from 100 cases to several thousand, almost to 1 million. The volume. How many cases of cybercrime do you have here in Poland on a monthly basis? 10, maybe, that you know of? Here, Beijing and China is publicly willing to announce that they have over 1 million cases of cybercrime. So do you really think any of those rules or security practices you're engaging in are going to work against a volume like this? Do you? Don't be shy. It's okay. I don't think they will. No, the world is not falling. China is trying to, from an internet surveillance perspective, make sure that those naughty cyber criminals inside China are not engaging in illicit activity. Here are their rules. What an eye chart, right? If you read the fine print, and I believe you will get a copy of the presentation, Mr. Moderator, will they? Will they get a copy of the presentation? I'm not sure. Okay, somebody will. Okay. You will notice on this, the bottom line is don't do anything that is non-Chinese, including cybercriminality. Now, you cannot put a face on a Chinese cybercriminal. You cannot. When you look at them in internet cafes, they're just like you or I, looking at a screen, controlling a mouse and a keyboard. But when they are apprehended, they are heads down in the lap in a face of shame. I cannot show you a specific cybercriminal inside China. So the crime market inside China is very interesting because it is services rather than what the Russians do, which you'll be introduced to here in a few minutes. They will give you services on how to DDoS a site, not necessarily get down to the tactical aspect of skimming a POS system in the United States, but more on a strategic level. What's interesting about Chinese cybercrime is they try to demonize it with cartoons. If you search cybercriminality in Mandarin on the Chinese internet in Baidu or Sogu, you will see nothing but cartoons when it comes to the stories. You will not see the face of a cybercriminal. But when it comes to success stories, you will see the police as sharp and as incisive as they are here in Poland or any place else on the planet. They want you to know that there is a face behind that badge, which I think is interesting. Now, my final slide on China. Here are the conclusions I will give you. They know that cyber spying does not pay, regardless of what the FBI says. Governments don't have money, do they? Do they? They do, or they do not? They have money? Poland has money? Polish government has money. You know this video is going to be on YouTube, right? Okay. No, the point here is it doesn't do me any good if I'm a cyber criminal to hack the Polish government. All I can do is steal your state secrets, which the Americans are doing already, so why bother? The Chinese, though, they do understand that Western companies, in particular the United States, when it comes to securing their infrastructure, are very vulnerable, and they haven't quite figured out how to protect it yet. So if I'm a cyber criminal, I know that I can steal that intellectual property, which leads me to the next point, and then sell it back to another Chinese state-owned enterprise inside China for a greater price, and then I'll find their competitors and sell it to them too, which is very interesting. And if I'm caught as a Chinese hacker, I know that by default, the Chinese government will maintain plausible deniability and say I didn't do it. So I get away scot-free. Kind of a perfect storm, isn't it? You do have to understand that when compared to other nation states or cybercrime and cyber criminals, strategic focus is the main part of a Chinese cyber criminal and making money. It's not stealing state secrets, because we can follow the American example and do it even better. All right. So I talked about the Cyber Foreign Crime Treaty from the Chinese perspective. Well, the Russians are allies of the Chinese and said, "Niet, we will not sign that either. We will protect our own internal security, thank you very much, spasibo, and we will do it ourselves. We do not need you to tell us how to do it, foreign powers." So let's go to Russia. There's a map of it. How many of you have been to Russia in the past 4 months? Okay. All right, that's all right. So some of you have been. It's a beautiful country. I have some Russian hackers, and they introduced me and demystified this Russian bear that I had come to know as the Cold War enemy. It's a very nice country. However, they have some fantastic technical minds there that use their skills for nefarious types of activity, such as hacking systems. If you go back to 2008, the United States has recognized them as indeed a growing threat from a cybercrime trend. In 2008, they were talking about millions of dollars in loss. You get to 2012, even the Russians are announcing that it is in the hundreds of thousands of dollars of loss by cybercriminals and hackers. Does anyone think this is a threat coming to Poland? No, right? And then we have 2014. And of course, we have the examples in the United States that I'll touch on, but card fraud in the United States, because we do not use the pin and chip system, as you've heard from some of the other speakers, makes us an easy target. That is slowly, however, changing. But in the meantime, the Russian hackers will take advantage of that vulnerable system and get away with millions of dollars in cash. Now, who's heard of sandworm? There's one hand. Two, what is sandworm? Can you educate the rest of the audience briefly? It was a critical vulnerability that had been identified 5 years ago, wasn't it? Microsoft, right? Right? And what happened? It was used for what? It was a piece of Russian malware that was going to be used for bank fraud, wasn't it? What happened 2 weeks ago? Yes, they used the same vulnerability and the same malware from Russia to attack nation states. This is perhaps a very serious threat, not only from inside the United States, but certainly here in Poland. Because I think Poland was one of the main targets, weren't they? Yes, someone's nodding over there. Uh-oh. Uh-oh. All right. So the United States regards Russian hackers as those that they want to hire, because we have a critical shortfall in terms of hackers. So what does the U.S. military do? We will hire Russian hackers to help us. They did it in 2012, and they announced it again in 2013. So if you're with the U.S. CERT, you should perhaps be worried because the enemy is inside your gates, isn't it, gentlemen? No comment, right? Okay. So what happened also last week on the 8th of October, 7th of October? 60% of the top 5 banks in the United States were taken advantage of by what? A bot, wasn't it? They used this particular malware to what? Take money out of ATMs. And what was the name of that cyber gang? Certainly this audience knows who it was. Who was that? It was the Northern Gold Group. They found it very easy to target ATMs globally, and in particular those in the United States, JP Morgan and other financial institutions, and said, we can make a lot of money by just simply making these ATMs spit money out for us. Very, very interesting. 500,000 PCs were infected. 500,000 in order to do their naughtiness. I think that's pretty good. So what could Russian law enforcement do about this? What do they do? Who is Russian law enforcement? Anyone? Okay. Don't steal my thunder. It's actually the FSB, you're right. But it is Department K. Thank you for that lead-in, by the way. So in 1998, they said, we need to enforce the sphere of information technology and make sure that it is safe for our state security. They were not factoring in cyber criminality. That came later. 3 years later, in 2001, the FSB said, we're going to create, thank you very much, Department K, which is going to focus on cyber criminal activity inside the binary landscape of Russia. So they were starting to think that it was internal security threats. And Department K was created. Of course, in Russia, what happens if you break the law? The law breaks you, doesn't it? Anybody notice the slip of the tongue at the top there? I'm still referring to it as Soviet Russia. Okay. So hackers have a particular language, and it is slang based on the language that they speak semantically in the region of Russia that they come from, and they transliterate not only Russian, but English words to obfuscate their activity on some of these billboards. So even if you did speak Russian, you wouldn't be able to track or have any idea of what they were talking about unless you were part of that particular cybercrimes vocabulary group. This is a small slide, but what this should really tell you is that some of those cybercrime words that the Russian hackers are using are also combining English and other languages in order to create their own vernacular, their own vocabulary, making it even more difficult for somebody in law enforcement to track their activity. So here's a breakdown of cyber criminal activity inside Russia. What do you think the total amount of this chart is? Anyone? Who's a math wizard? Press the button. 2.3 billion US dollars is the total market. You'll notice that online fraud is the highest. And what is online fraud? ATM skimming and creating systems that are vulnerable to give me the money that I need. So make no mistake, ladies and gentlemen, they're very good. They're very good. Notice the category that says C2C. What is that? cybercrime to cybercrime organization. That is really frightening if you look at that total amount. That's a lot. All right. So I would give you this premise. Where are we going with this? We know that the Russian business network is defunct, are they not? Is this increase in criminality inside Russia's binary backyards a reemergence of the Russian mafia and the Russian business networks? Is it? I don't know. Partly? Why do you say partly?
Spin-offs.
Spin-offs, yeah. I mean, if it pays, why not do it, right? We know the Americans are going to cause us not to have petrol and other things, and we're going to shut that down for the Ukraine, so we might as well do something, right? We've all seen CryptoLocker in a couple of presentations yesterday. I'm going to put a face on it. Here, the United States government has identified this individual as the creator of that. He lives in luxury inside Russia, free as a bird, $100 million net worth, if not more than that. And how did he create that net worth? Did he work a lifetime and invest carefully like we all try to do as honest citizens? No. He infected a number of countries. There was racial equality in his effect of cybercrime. No country was left untouched. For a couple $1,000s, he created a piece of malware that netted him 100 million or more. Not a bad return on investment. If I were dishonest, I would be doing that myself. You know why? Because the FBI would never catch me. Pretty good business model if you think about it. Not bad at all. So how many people participate in Russian cyber criminal underground marketplaces besides me? Anyone? Nobody's going to admit it because you could be arrested. Well, you do, I know that. But here, if you look, you'll see my old logo, and you'll see here I'm logged into a Russian marketplace, looking at different types of exploits that I could buy if I really wanted to. But I'm not that smart. What can you buy there? Anything that your little heart desires. And if you've got the money, the will, and the motivation, you too can take advantage of a vulnerable system and make all types of money in the same way that the Russian cyber criminals do. Everything. Stolen credit cards, we all know about that. But look at some of these other things. Fake documents, Trojans of any variety in any language that you want, including Chinese, certainly Russian, of course. So, why do these cyber criminals hack? For some of the same reasons that the Chinese do. It's profitable. It is a business to them. They also know that companies in the West, such as Target, Home Depot, etc., have vulnerable systems because they don't use the pin and chip that the rest of the world does, so we can, as Russian hackers, easily take advantage of them. It's also a repeatable process which nets us even more money. Who here operates an online business? Except for the guy from McAfee. Everybody does, right? It's repeatable. If you can make it repeatable, what happens? You can make even more money. The Russians hackers know this. They also know, much like Bogdanovich, who wrote the CryptoLocker, that the West is unlikely to bring them to justice, so they can get away with it scot-free. It's a beautiful proposition. My next life, I want to grow up as a Russian hacker. Make money, right? Not have to travel the world and speak about it. Russian law enforcement, they do know that if it is identified as an internal security threat, that the Russian Department K and the FSB are swift and decisive. They take no prisoners. If you're violating the law inside Russia, you will be arrested. If it's outside of Russia, not so much. If, however, a foreign law enforcement entity lets Department K and the FSB know that there is a Russian hacker attacking them and it is now attracted or associated with national security threats to the Russian state, they're going to arrest them. But only if they are notified by foreign law enforcement. Otherwise, doesn't matter to me. I've got other things to do, like drink vodka at 8 o'clock in the morning. All right, some of my conclusions, you'll notice that they are organized in both China and Russia. There is a military association in both countries. China, it's started with cyber espionage, intellectual property, military secrets. Russia, it is morphed into an organized criminal enterprise after the demise of the Soviet Union. There is governmental support for both. Talked about plausible deniability in China. And in Russia, unless it's an internal state security issue, it doesn't matter to them. Is there an impact economically internally? Yes, there is. Positively if you're a criminal. Externally, negatively if you operate vulnerable systems in the United States and other countries. Sucks to be you. Foreign law enforcement cooperation, yes. The Chinese Ministry of State Security and Public Security is working with other entities, particularly the Indonesians, Australians, and other countries, but not the United States. And the Russians, from a law enforcement perspective, will work with you if you identify it as a state secret compromise or security issue. And when it comes to international cybercrime treaties, China and Russia could care less. Unless it is something of their design and their culture, it will not apply to them. Look carefully at this slide, ladies and gentlemen. Those are pens and hand sanitizers from the Federal Bureau of Investigation, made in China. I wish this slide was current, but it is from 5 years ago. They are still using products made in China from the same criminals that they're trying to arrest. Ooh, not good. How embarrassing. You know how we say that in Chinese? Bu hao yi si de. My face is on fire. All right, that is how you get a hold of me. Hopefully you'll bring me back next year. I love it here in Poland. And again, I thank you very much for the opportunity. Do I have any questions? Yes, sir. Yes, sir, please. Here, I'll give you the mic.
Okay. Yeah, thanks, Bill. Excellent thought. But you know, there's a wonder that comes into my head. If we'd have known, particularly in the US, that such hacking has been going on, particularly for the Chinese, how come nothing's been done about it? Or surely something must have been done about it to reduce that. So what was the reason for this?
That's a very good question. Are you a hacker?
Yeah.
You are, okay. You can admit that here, but not in the UK, right?
Right.
Okay. My question to you then, sir, is nothing is being done about it because law enforcement in the United States, those that would guard the critical infrastructure of the United States or any country, the United Kingdom, Poland, doesn't matter, don't have systems that can handle a 2-byte binary hack. Do you know what a 2-byte binary is? Okay, what is it?
Very fractional, less than a second. Yeah.
Well, yes, and it's primarily used in Mandarin to write code, and in Russian, and I believe here in Poland you probably, although you're coding in English, you can transmogrify or change that into a 2-byte binary. So if you have a Western information security technology system in place that you paid billions of dollars for, it doesn't matter to me. So next time you have a rep from one of these firms, stop them at the door and say, does your system handle 2-byte binary, sir? If the answer is no, say this meeting is over. Goodbye. That's why. Because we don't have systems in place to detect that. Did I answer your question, sir?
Indeed, indeed.
I wish I had better news, but nobody can challenge me on that. Why? I don't want to be right. I do not. Oh, dear. Any other questions? I promise not to bite. None. Wow. Okay. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate the opportunity.